There's no doubt about it that life is getting expensive. Inflation in Australia is currently running at 6.1%, which means that the cost of everyday goods and services has increased or is increasing quite substantially. Anybody that's bought an $11.99 iceberg lettuce can attest to this. Also, if you're a homeowner with a mortgage, then the pinch is even harder. Since April, interest rates have increased by 2.25%. So on a $500,000 loan with a 25-year loan term and a starting interest rate of 2.5%, the minimum repayment has increased by a whopping $608 per month, and I fear there are another couple of rate rises in the barrel for this year. If you've been on a fixed rate mortgage, then you probably haven't felt this pinch just yet, but be warned, it is coming. Majority of those sub 3% fixed rate loans are going to expire in the next couple of years, and the new rates on fixed loans are not nearly as good. And this increase in interest rates is by design. Now, it sounds a little bit backwards, but by increasing interest rates, the Reserve Bank of Australia is purposefully adding to the increased cost of living. The idea is that higher interest rates cause people to allocate more money to their mortgage, leaving them with less money to spend on other goods and services. And this reduces demand, which in turn should help to ease inflation. The unfortunate part about this is that it all affects the people on the low to middle incomes the most, because those people didn't have a whole lot of surplus cash flow to start with. So you start adding on these extra cost of living pressures, and all of a sudden it becomes difficult just to stay above water. And so what are the options for these people? Well, the good news is there are a few options out there, and that is exactly what we're going to talk about in today's video. Now, some of the options, they're not all easy to do, but they're definitely possible. And some of the options, the starting ones are a little bit mainstream, but as we progress in the video, there's probably a few options in there that you haven't really thought about. Hello guys, Brad here from The Guided Investor. Welcome back to the channel for another video. If you're new here, consider hitting that subscribe button because I post regular videos about how you can do more with your money. And today we're talking about 5 different ways that you can help fight the increased cost of living. When everything around you is getting more and more expensive, earning a little bit of extra money is gonna go a long way. The extra earnings can help to offset the increase in prices. Now, for a lot of people, the thought of earning extra money can seem unrealistic, but you need to remove that barricade in your brain that's telling you that your earnings potential is capped. And you have to remember that we are all self-employed. You're probably thinking, what the hell do you mean, Brad, that we're all self-employed? That is just silly. But bear with me and let me explain. As an employee, it is generally accepted that you have very little control over your income because your income is set by your employer. But this is simply not true. Your income is actually a representation of the skills you possess, your tenacity, and your willingness to work hard. There might also be a little element of luck involved sometimes, but we can't rely on luck, so let's take that out of the equation. So even though as an employee, there is a third party out there that's paying you, all of the factors that make up a good income are actually in your control. It's up to you to develop your skills, your education, your training, your experience, your willingness to work, and all of those things are going to allow you to demand a higher income. So instead of seeing yourself as an employee, see yourself as a contractor. You are operating a business, you are the sole asset of that business, and your employer is the client of that business. And it's up to you to increase the business revenue by renting out your time and expertise at a fair amount. As your skills and experience progress, your time becomes more valuable. You are going to be worth more to your employer the more that you are able to do. And this is going to allow you to demand a higher salary. And if your current employer is not willing to pay that higher salary, what you're actually worth, well then find someone that will. At the moment, our unemployment rate in Australia is sitting at 3.5%. Now this is the lowest it's ever been, and it creates a massive opportunity to find an employer that will pay you your worth. Now there is a big difference between knowing you're worth more and thinking you're worth more. If you're the type of person that does the absolute minimum in order to get that paycheck every single week or fortnight or month or whatever it works out to be, well then it's probably not reasonable to assume that you're worth any more than what you're currently getting. You have to be proactive about this, you have to develop that skills base, and then you're in a position to make those demands. If earning more sounds a little bit too hard, then you can flip the coin instead and create surplus cash flow by actually spending less. In life, we tend to spend a lot of money on goods and services that are non-essential. That's the discretionary items. And I'm not here to tell you that you shouldn't have discretionary spending, because spending money on wants does help to make life more enjoyable. However, your expenditure needs to be prioritized. There is a level of discretionary spending in our lives that makes a big difference, but you start to overdo it and you start to get diminishing returns in terms of the additional enjoyment that it brings to your life. For example, there was a time where I was buying my lunch out pretty much every single day. And this started off great because where the office was at that time, there was a lot of good food places around and I was enjoying it. But after a while, I found that it just became a bit boring and all I was doing was looking for a place to fill my belly. Nowadays, I rarely buy lunch out. I find it's a lot cheaper and healthier for me to make my own lunches. And the times when I do go out and buy some lunch, well then I enjoy it again because I'm not overindulging. So find those discretionary items in your budget, work out which ones are not really making a meaningful difference to your life and cut back on them. If you don't have a budget to work off, then your first step is going to be to create one. You can find a budget template on my website labeled Wealth Tracker, which will do the job nicely. Once you have your budget, you then need to structure your accounts properly to make it easy to stick with. Now, my last video was a deep dive into account structuring, so go back and watch that one. And I'll put a link to both of these things in the description box below. Option 3 could have been tied into option 2, but I thought it was meaningful enough to give it its own segment. And option 3 is substituting. In life, we have choices and plenty of them, so we can use our ability to choose in order to make some decisions which are gonna help us save some much needed money. And the best bit about substitution is that you're not going without. You're probably not gonna get your first option, but there's normally a backup option which is gonna adequately fill that need or that want. So let me give you a few examples of how substitution may work. Netflix instead of cinemas. Who doesn't love a good movie night? However, going to the cinemas is probably gonna set you back at least $20 per ticket, and the price of popcorn is eye-watering. So instead of going to the cinemas, how about getting a Netflix subscription, spending $15 for a whole month, and spending $5 on some microwave popcorn? Chicken instead of steak. Red meats are significantly more expensive than white meat, and your cardiologist will probably tell you it's also better for your health. And while you're at it, why not throw in a few extra veggies? Because again, they're cheaper and healthier. Obviously, with the exception of the iceberg lettuce, they're not so cheap at the moment. But in general, veggies are a pretty good substitution. And if you're into your cardiovascular exercise, you could consider running around the park instead of a gym. Now, if you go to the gym and your primary piece of equipment you use is a treadmill, then dare I say it's probably not worth it. Spring has sprung, so go outside, get some exercise, get some fresh air, and save yourself some money. Hopefully these few little examples can get those creative juices flowing so you can work out what substitutions you can make in your life in order to save yourself some money and not go without. By eliminating debt, you eliminate the repayment that goes with that debt, and in turn, you free up cash flow. It might sound a little bit difficult paying out debt when you already don't have any surplus cash flow in order to throw at it. However, where there is a will, there is a way, and in this instance, the way is to sell stuff. By selling all of those unused items such as bikes, jewelry, clothing, gym equipment, anything that you have bought at one point in your life but seldom use, it's amazing how much extra cash you can actually free up from that stuff. You could even consider selling financial assets like shares or investment property. Just be aware though that if you do sell a financial asset, you're obviously going to forego any future investment return that you could make off that asset. And there's other implications, potential tax implications like capital gains tax that you need to be aware of. With the proceeds from the sale of all of these items, we can start to throw some cash at the debts. And the idea is that we want to get rid of the debts in full to eliminate the need for the regular repayment. So it's probably best to focus on the smallest debts first. Things like credit cards, personal loans, car loans, that kind of stuff, because hopefully you can pay them out in full and have no future repayment. Just be aware though that depending on the type of loan you have, there may be early repayment penalties if you pay the loan out prior to the prescribed loan term. So from my experience, this often applies to things like car loans. And just because there's an early repayment penalty doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. but you just need to understand the trade-off before doing something like this. So by paying out your debts in full, you are essentially buying yourself future cash flow. And I think that's a pretty cool concept that you can use a lump sum of money to buy future cash flow. Staying with the theme of debt, if your budget is getting squeezed by the increasing interest rate on your mortgage and it's not practical to pay out your mortgage in full, well then you could consider refinancing to a new 30-year loan term. Now let me give you an example as to how this can work. If you have a $500,000 mortgage with an interest rate of 4.5% and the remaining loan term is 20 years, your minimum repayment will be $3,163 per month. If you kept the same interest rate but refinanced to a new 30-year loan term, your minimum repayment will drop by $630 per month to $2,533 per month. If in the process of refinancing, you can consolidate some of your smaller debts like credit cards and car loans and personal loans, and you can also get a better interest rate in your mortgage, then this is gonna help you further. You can also consider combining options 4 and 5 by selling some items, using the proceeds from the sale to make a lump sum repayment off your mortgage, and then refinance to a new 30-year loan term on the reduced rate or the reduced level of mortgage. Now, I just wanna be very clear that this is not a wealth building strategy. By refinancing to a new 30-year loan term, you're gonna be in debt longer, which is gonna mean that you're gonna pay more in interest. This strategy is simply to help you free up cash flow in a time of need, but I would recommend that you try and get your repayments back to at least where they were before you refinanced. Also bear in mind there are costs involved when it comes to refinancing. So if this is a strategy that you are considering, then I would highly recommend you speak with a mortgage broker. They can outline all of the implications specific to your scenario and give you a range of options. So I hope these 5 tips to help free up cash flow have helped you. Now, the worst thing that you could do is do nothing. You always have options, and doing nothing is one of those options, but it's not a good one. You don't want to let the strain on your cash flow get so bad that you start meeting your loan obligations. At best, this is going to leave you with a bad credit rating. At worst, you could potentially start to lose big assets like your house and maybe even have to file for bankruptcy. But I hope this video has inspired you and given you some ideas how to get on the front foot and take control of the situation before it gets too bad. But that's it for me today, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. If this video has helped you at all, then please give it a thumbs up and I will see you guys in the next one.